What's up everyone? Today is my birthday.
And a birthday mist has descended.
Your birthday is today. Happy birthday. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday from Google. Happy birthday to you.
I'm 33 years old today, but actually I'm not really bothered. The truth be told, I thought I was already 33. So I'm not massively depressed about having a birthday, and actually I feel like I've got an entire bonus year. This is Ninja. When I started making these videos, I promised myself I was going to be completely honest about the good stuff and the bad stuff, and this week definitely fell into the bad stuff category. So I'm going to explain a little bit about the, I don't want to say crisis, but the situation that we had and how we dealt with it, what we learned from it. So it's been another super busy week, not just sorting out the situation, which I'll explain in a bit. I've also been filming more of the marketing makeovers that we're running for people. So we're going into businesses, turning around their digital marketing, rebuilding their website, stuff like that, and then running super intense campaigns for them over a couple of months to see what sorts of improvement we can get for them. So it's certainly pushed me outside my comfort zone, because it's like making TV basically. We're doing it ourselves. It's not like some super pro shoot, but it's making TV. It's walking up to people and saying hello and leading them through an interview on screen, and then filming all of the behind the scenes digital marketing that we're doing as well. So it's quite an intense thing to do. It's lots of fun. There's plenty of driving, which feels really inefficient, as I've said before, but it is a really good fun thing to do, and I think it could be really powerful. It's certainly the sort of stuff that I would like to watch on YouTube. So who knows if anybody else will like to watch it too, but hey, I promised that we would do it. And then the rest of the week was spent fixing this kind of issue. So we manage Google Ads for people. Just to give a bit of context on the situation, we manage Google Adverts for people, so businesses. And when you manage Google Ads for people, you have an agency account in Google Ads. And this agency account basically lets you collect all of your client accesses and shows you all of the client campaigns underneath your agency account. So it means if you log into the agency account, you can see into all of the different client campaigns, and you can make the changes and improve their campaigns and make them more money. Now, we've got a team of ninjas at Exposure Ninja that manage the agency and all the client accounts, and that's their job. They spend all day managing and optimizing each of these different client campaigns. And we give our clients access to their own campaigns, which is quite different. And not all agencies give their clients access to their own campaign, but we think we need to be really transparent. We want our clients to see exactly what we're doing, so we give them access to this campaign. Now, during a routine operation of giving a client access to their campaign, one of the team inadvertently, instead of giving the client access to their own campaign, gave the client access to our agency campaign. So immediately there's a potential data breach here, because each of these individual client campaigns has potential personal data in. So things like name, address, last 4 digits of the card number. Nothing really sensitive, so no super personal information, but still enough that it's technically a data breach, and we would then want to notify the clients that there has been a potential data breach. Now, if this happened 100 times, which obviously it doesn't, but if it happened 100 times, 99 times out of 100, no other thing would happen. We'd let the clients know that there'd been a potential data breach. The person, as soon as we found out, we locked them out of all the individual client accounts, and that would be that. For whatever reason, unknown only to this person, they managed to get into some of the other client accounts, like not their client account, and make a few changes. Now, the changes were nothing drastic. It was just turning off things that had been turned on and turning on things that had been turned off. But they were drastic enough that money was spent in these client campaigns. Additional money was spent. So not only now did we have a data breach, potential data breach, we also had these campaigns that had been messed with by this person who doesn't really know what they're doing. So we had to let the clients know that A, there'd been a data breach, and then for those who'd had their campaigns changed, we had to let them know that someone had been in, changed their campaigns without authority, and that we were going to have to take care of the reimbursement. But then things got even worse, because while we were letting people know, we were sending out an email using BCC. So we send, because there's like 80 different client campaigns, and we found out on Friday morning, spent the whole day Friday figuring out exactly what had happened, exactly who'd been accessed, and then we wanted to let the clients know as soon as possible. So we sent out an email on Friday afternoon. We didn't have time to ring all 80, so we sent out a mass email, but instead of BCCing, so each person just got their own stuff, for one of the batches of emails, we actually managed to CC people. So now multiple clients saw the same email, and they saw all of the other emails of other clients whose data had been breached. And then, to make matters even worse, one of those people responded really angrily, CCing everyone else as well. So we've gone from a situation where there's a data breach to a situation where there's money being spent to a situation where people are angry, and people are visibly angry to the other people, which of course then makes the other people angry, because they're like, well, if that person's so angry, maybe I should be angry too. So the whole thing escalated. And the person who was angry made a whole bunch of allegations about us breaching GDPR, which were completely untrue, and also accused us of taking kickbacks from Google, which again, completely untrue, so baseless allegations. But very suddenly, this felt really not ideal at all. Now, when this happened, we didn't know to what extent the clients would be upset. Because on one hand, mistakes happen. This person who'd accidentally given access, fantastic ninja, you'd want them next to you, you'd want them working on your client campaign any day of the week, brilliant person. They made a completely honest mistake, they gave the wrong level of access. It's relatively easy to do. And of course, with 100 people in the company working on maybe 50 to 100 tasks per day, eventually somebody is going to make a mistake. So on the one hand, mistakes happen. On the other hand, they could see it as, Exposure Ninja we trusted, and Exposure Ninja has let us down. So we didn't really know how clients were going to react to this. But whatever happens, whenever we get a situation like this, there's like 3 things that we do. We react with speed, we react with complete transparency, and then we look at processes and fixing. So I want to just talk about how we reacted in this situation and what happened as a result. Now, the first thing, as soon as I found out that this breach had happened and I knew exactly who'd been involved and the extent of the breach, the first thing I will always do is go to the person who made the mistake immediately and say, it was a mistake, you're good, don't worry, don't panic. Because people's immediate reaction in this type of situation is to start beating themselves up. Now, having never really worked for anyone, I don't really have a role model for a leader in this type of situation, so I don't know what normal accepted practice is. But when something happens like this and one person is at fault, the last thing I want that person to do, or the last thing I want to do as that person's leader, is to go in there and pummel them. Right, they're being pummeled by guilt anyway. If they have any shred of morality, which everyone at Exposure Ninja does, because that's one of the things that we interview for, see previous episode, then they feel racked by guilt. They feel guilty for letting down their team, they feel guilty for letting down the client, they feel guilty for letting down the company. So they don't need punishment from me, they need reassurance from me. You're okay, we'll get this sorted, everything's a learning experience. At the end of the day, there's always a process or some part of whatever's happened that is Exposure Ninja and my responsibility anyway. So we'll always look at it completely proactively and stand by that person. We want to make sure that they're ready to fight another battle to help us get this thing sorted. And they can't do that if their head's down, if they go into hiding, or they just completely collapse, We don't want to destroy their confidence. So first thing is find the person, reassure them everything's going to be okay. We love them. They're as good today as they were yesterday when we loved them. So this is just an honest mistake and it happens to everyone. The next thing that we do is immediately notify anyone who's going to be affected. So, in this case, it was clients. So we had to let all of the clients know exactly what had happened. Now, we didn't technically we could have got away with not letting any of the clients whose accounts hadn't been tampered with, we could have got away without telling them. And it would have saved us a lot of emails and a lot of phone calls. But we made the call very early on that it's the right thing to do to let these clients know that their accounts could have been accessed, even though there was no evidence that they had been. We wanted to let them know that there was the potential that they could have been accessed anyway. We think it's the right thing to do. It's what we would want to in the same circumstances. So we're always going to take that action. Maximum transparency is one of the things that we're really keen on at Exposure Ninja. So there was never any question. As soon as this happened, we're going to let everyone know, even though it could potentially hurt us more than if we just kept it quiet. So we sent out an email. Like I said, we were letting people know late on Friday. I think the email went out about 10 to 5, so there wasn't time to ring all 80 people and let them know individually. So we sent them out an email explaining exactly what had happened. All the information that we had at that time, we conveyed. We didn't hold anything back at all. And the people whose accounts had actually been impacted, we let them know exactly what had happened, the changes this person had made, and how much additional it had cost them. So we just laid all our cards on the table and said, this is exactly what has happened. Now, we wanted to conduct our own internal investigation, but we had to wait until Monday and Tuesday to do this. So immediately we got as much of the information as we possibly could, shared it with the clients. Now, when we shared it with the clients, we got one of two reactions. The first reaction was that Exposure Ninja, or we, or in particular me, had completely broken that person's trust, and that they no longer trusted us, they felt violated. Similar, I think, to the sense that you feel when you've been burgled, right? So even if someone had broken into your house and not taken anything, the fact is someone else had been in your space unauthorized, and that really makes people feel violated. And I completely, 100% get that feeling. So some people reacted with this, with this response. And interestingly, it wasn't the people whose budget had been spent. This was mostly the people who actually their campaigns weren't doing very much at all. They were at very, very low levels. They hadn't been really actually impacted at all. And it was often these people who said, I feel violated. Tim, in particular, me, you have messed this up. I want to know what you're going to do to fix it, and I hope that you feel bad. And they were quite personal. I spoke to some of them on the phone. They wanted me in particular to feel awful about it, and they were very, very clear on this, which I thought was really, really interesting. The second response, interestingly, from our most successful clients, and not just the clients that we've made successful, but clients who are successful anyway, and who maybe might be quite new to us. In fact, some of them we weren't even working with yet, we'd just been reviewing their accounts. The response from them was very different. Universally, they said, these things happen, we trust and we love you, we love everything that we've seen from Exposure Ninja so far. Thank you for the transparency. As long as the budget gets refunded, we're all good. And in fact, some of them didn't even want the budget refunded. Now, I was completely blown away by this. I think that's how I would have reacted in this situation, with a cool, rational head. I don't know what the difference in reactions was. It was very telling that it was the most successful businesses that reacted in the most positive and proactive way. So I don't know whether that's cause or effect. The success of the business is cause or effect of their attitude at all. But it was really interesting, and I learned a lot from their responses, because many of the businesses that responded like that are actually far more successful than I or Exposure Ninja are. So I'm always kind of trying to learn from these clients and how they operate their businesses. So that was really interesting. I developed a lot of respect for a lot of these businesses, because at the end of the day, these sorts of mistakes do happen. It could have happened to absolutely anyone. It was just our day that day. So as soon as Monday came around, we'd had the weekend. One thing I really wish I'd done was give, in the email that we sent out to everyone, I wish I'd given them my mobile number, because kind of giving them the weekend to think it over and get themselves worked up about it really didn't help. So I wish I'd had their mobile number, then they could have just called me, I could have clarified the situation. Some of the people that we contacted thought that the email was fake, they thought it was phishing, because it came from an Exposure Ninja address and was very specific about AdWords, but they were like, oh, I'm not sure if it's real. So again, if I'd given them my mobile number in that email, then they could have called me personally. I was checking my emails throughout the weekend anyway, but yeah, the mobile I think would have just given them some reassurance. So first thing Monday, we conduct an internal review. I contacted the ICO, which is the Information Commissioner's Office, to find out if we needed to report this as a data breach to the ICO. And what we decided, having talked to the agent there, was that actually we didn't need to report it. You only need to report a data breach if there's significant risk to the individuals whose data has been potentially accessed. And we decided there wasn't significant risk because A, if the person who'd got into the account wanted to go unnoticed, they wouldn't have made any changes, right? So if they just wanted to get data out, they wouldn't have made any changes, because as soon as they made changes, we saw. Number two, they couldn't have premeditated anything. They didn't know that they were going to get this agency level access, so they couldn't have been malicious about it. And number three, if they really wanted to mess up people's lives and businesses, they could have done a lot more damage than just turning on and off things, right? They could have set up all sorts of ads pointing to their website and done all sorts of kind of malicious stuff, which they didn't. So on this basis, and having spoken to the client on the phone, as soon as I found out who it was, I spoke to them on the phone, and I spoke to him and just made sure that he didn't have any kind of malicious intent. He was like, I have no idea what happened. I didn't do that stuff intentionally. So, you know, we were happy that there was no significant risk to the people involved. So we wrote up a full report explaining our reasoning for this. We logged it in our internal system, which logs these things, and we sent it out to clients as well. So they then had this full report, which broke down exactly, you know, in more detail, and explained our reasoning for not reporting this data breach to the ICO. We then recorded some internal training to all of the team in Exposure Ninja, explaining exactly what had happened and going through the processes, and, you know, if you notice this, then you need to do this. If this happens, you need to do this, and just making sure everyone was on the same page. There's really three principles that we work to whenever anything happens like this. And having spoken to people on the phone who are impacted by this breach, these were the three things that they found most reassuring. So the first principle is speed. Whenever something like this happens, you've got to act as quickly as possible. You can't just sit there or hope that it goes away. It's not going away. As soon as it's happened, the people involved and the entire PPC team rallied round. They worked through really late on Friday to figure out exactly what had happened, who'd been impacted, and how much they'd been impacted. So they dropped their work and all rallied around together to figure out exactly what had happened. And that was really important, because it meant that we could go to clients within 24 hours of this thing happening and say, okay, this is exactly what's happened, and this is what's happened to you specifically. And that gave a lot of reassurance. The second principle is transparency. We didn't try and hide anything. We were completely honest about absolutely everything that had happened. And I think that's really important as well, because if people feel like we're hiding something, that really damages their trust. So we were totally transparent and explained exactly what happened. The third thing we look at is process, and I and we at Exposure Ninja have a tendency to kind of take over responsibility for any issues and look at the process that allowed that issue to happen and blame that. Because if the process is absolutely rigid and bulletproof, then really there shouldn't be too much human error that's even possible. So any situation often will look first at the process that's broken before we look at an individual person who might be at fault. So in this type of situation, firstly we looked at the specific process that led to this even being able to happen. And after some study, we identified that there was actually a way to prevent this even being possible in future. So that's ideal. But we didn't just stop there. We actually took this as an opportunity to look at potential access across the entire company and make sure that something like this was as impossible as possible across the entire company. So we looked at access rules for every single file, document and account inside Exposure Ninja. So we completely overreacted to the situation, and rather than just fixing that thing, we said, okay, what else can we fix across the entire company? And this was really interesting because we actually identified that there were a couple of potential weak spots across other areas in the company, completely unrelated to this, and we never would have discovered those had we not looked at them with the lens that this situation had given us. And it led to us being able to implement a couple of things which will really increase the security inside the company for ninjas and for clients. And my wife, actually, when I was talking about this whole situation with her, she said, actually, you know, there's often a really good part to these horrendous situations. And the good part will sometimes be, you know, you hear about people who go in for a relatively minor operation and they realise that there's something more major inside them and they get it fixed, and they wouldn't have been there had it not been for the minor issue. And I really strongly believe it's very much like that with business as well. And by addressing these things and completely overreacting to them, actually this awful issue, which took an entire week and a huge amount of stress for loads of people, clients and ninjas, resulted in some really positive changes, which will help us to be a more secure and a better company moving forward. And then the other part of this is, if you assume that every mistake is a lesson that has to be learned, often those lessons are only learned when the mistake happens. There are a lot of significant improvements, like real big step changes in our service and in our company that have happened over the years. And often these have been triggered by an unhappy client or a client comment. And without that comment or without that unhappy client, we wouldn't have taken this time, completely overreacted and looked at how can we fix this in a massive way, and implemented those changes that led to a new level of performance. So in that way, these sorts of issues can actually be a really positive thing if they lead to super productive change. The other component here is, if that's the lesson that we had to learn, so much better to learn it at this stage than when we have, rather than 80 client accounts, 800 or 8,000 or 80,000, right? Much better to happen now, and for us to fix that process and that hole now, than when the downside could have been even massive. So whilst it's a really undesirable situation and something that we never would have wanted to happen, and the whole thing's been massively stressful, on the plus side, the effects weren't as serious as they could have been, and it's good that it happened now. It's led to process improvements and changes and all of this stuff which we wouldn't have figured out had this thing not happened. So I think there's a mindset piece whenever any of these sorts of situations happen, that say, okay, this is a terrible thing that's happened, but how can we make the most of it, and how can we look at this productively and proactively in order to make sense of it in our heads. So that really helped, and I think once we had that conversation internally, we started seeing the whole thing much more proactively and positively, and that really kind of helped, draw the team together. So a pretty tough week all in all, but everything's sorted, processes fixed and improved. It's impossible for this particular thing to happen again, and it's very unlikely that related things will happen as a direct result of this thing happening. So hopefully it's the end of a challenging chapter and the start of a new one. Really excited. We've got so much cool stuff coming with Explosion Ninja. It's going to be a massive year. We're actually launching a separate kind of mini business on the side called Sales Ninja, which is all about helping our clients with their sales process. So Explosion Ninja is helping them with marketing, and then Sales Ninja is helping them with the sales piece. So it'll be really interesting to see that. And we've got a big show coming up in March, the B2B Marketing Expo, always a big one for us. We've got an entire theatre this time, our own theatre, and we've got some incredible talks that we're going to be sharing with people, some all new material, so showing people behind the scenes of some ridiculous stuff, and we've got Ali and Wayne talking as well, so that's going to be amazing. If you're in or around London on the, I think, 26th, 27th of March, definitely worth popping along for that. But it's my birthday, so I'm gonna go and eat my body weight in ridiculously dark chocolate, and I'll see you soon.